Welcome in, everybody, to the CFP Showdown podcast, where the only thing higher than our expectations for the 2023 season is our production budget. Longtime listeners of the show are going to be excited today. We have a co-host, Captain Jack. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, brother. Before we get started, I think it's important we have a moment of silence for the University of Florida and all of their fans. Thank you very much. We know how difficult this week has been for you guys. Brutal week, and so we just wish you the absolute best.
It's like my grandmother always says, Utah will fuck you up. Well, definitely really exciting week one. I enjoyed watching it. A couple highlights for me were actually outside of the top 25 with Texas State beating the Baylor Bears. I was going to go watch a game there next week, but they fucked that up for me. As well as Wyoming with the biggest win in program history in overtime, taking Texas Tech to the deep end of the pool and coming out with a victory.
You know, after these week one performances, I hate to say it, but I think we might have an argument for Texas State being the best football team in the state of Texas.
Honestly, in a non-joking way, they very well might be the second best football team in Texas, which is hilarious. Terrible week for the Big 12. Kind of making conference realignment look pretty silly. Pac-12, on the other hand, unexpectedly dominating.
Yeah, the fact that every single team in the Pac-12 managed to win a game this week is probably, well, actually, I know it hasn't happened since about 1932, which is very believable because I don't know if you've watched the Pac-12 in recent history. It's been dog shit. So nice to see us get some wins.
Turns out they still play football on the West Coast. Shout out to Oregon State. But going forward, everyone's been talking about Colorado Buffaloes and the primetime Deion Sanders. Was a great game to watch. I think I have him at 23 right now. I'm sure a lot of people are going to have him higher. Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders played out of their minds, but I'm going to need to see a little bit more from them before I'm going to have them as a top 10 team. But definitely a team with a very high ceiling.
I agree. I think it kind of comes down to how well the defense can gel. Weren't able to create really any negative plays for TCU, but able to outduel them in a complete shootout. So we'll see how that offense and defense evolves as they get more time. 68 new players, a lot of chemistry to be made and created in a very short 12-week season.
Yeah, and moving down to Sodom and Gomorrah and Los Angeles, USC looked a lot better. Obviously, Caleb Williams is going to get his, and he played great with his painted nails. But, their defense actually didn't look like a wet paper bag. So if their defense can continue to improve, that's going to be a really dangerous team. I know you obviously were watching that game, Jack.
Yeah, it's exciting. There's a lot fewer holes in the Trojan condom this weekend in terms of defense, and that always makes a man happy.
Well, you could say it was a magnum performance. Well, you talk about USC, of course, you got to talk about the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Let me just go ahead and pack us in real quick. Notre Dame faced Tennessee State, their first ever FCS program. As a Notre Dame fan myself, was a little disappointed in that I'd like to be in the one FBS school in football to have never played an FCS school, but they took care of business. Sam Hartman looking like the real deal. I'm excited for him, and I think they give Notre Dame a chance to maybe win a playoff game this year, something they've never done, and I'm excited for that. Saw a lot of great coaching from Coach Freeman, bringing some consistency into what could have been potentially a sleeper game or, God forbid, an Appalachian State kind of game.
Never schedule App State. If you haven't learned that lesson as an FBS program, I just don't understand. Don't put them on the schedule.
Well, I once had a high school teacher, and he gave me 3 words of advice before I graduated. Number 1 was don't spit into the wind. Number 2 is if you become an athletic director, never schedule Appalachian State. And number 3 was don't do heroin.
2 for 3 there. It's can't be perfect, but 67% passing.
Well, what else do we got here, Jack? I know you were at the Texas game. Tell me about the atmosphere there.
Well, it was a great atmosphere, hot as fucking balls, but you know what? I was reminded by one thing. There's a reason that sobriety does not exist on Saturdays. Watching the first half of that game, I housed so many fucking beers because, my God, it was a shit show. Texas looked like they couldn't figure out how to play offense, and their defense was unbelievably good, making JT Daniels look like a toddler playing in a high school football game. That being said, they finally fucking turned it around in the second half, but by then I was already shit-faced at another bar.
Well, it's like I always say, even when the Big 12 wins, they lose. So a big fuck you to the Big 12 for ruining football. Next, I want to point out, number 12, we have the big slinging dick in the room, Utah. The Utes took care of business on Thursday night versus Florida. On Florida's part, that was the worst coach game of football I have ever seen in my life. A lot of questions on Billy Napier. How do you get a penalty on fourth down on a punt return, having two number threes on the field? That's just inexcusable. Well, at this point, we'd like to remind everyone of our podcast sponsor, the Florida Real Estate Commission. Obviously, Billy Napier could be using them this week. I don't expect him to be in Florida much longer if he keeps this bullshit up. 16, we have LSU. Of course, big game Brian Kelly's going to big game Brian Kelly. A total meltdown the second half. It was fun to watch for me. Jack, did you get a chance to watch that game?
I was sitting eating crawfish rooting on LSU.
And LSU, man. Well, the land of ASVAB waivers.
Yeah, well, gotta love one thing about it. The women of Baton Rouge are unlike any other.
Well, Florida State looked good, looked the part, shot themselves in the foot in the first half with a couple of late hits, getting personal fouls on that. But took care of business in the second half, had some great adjustments. Looking like a playoff team to me. Pretty easy route to the playoff. Gonna have to beat Clemson. I think they can do it. Definitely excited for the Seminoles and their stupid fucking song.
Fuck the Seminoles. They suck genitals.
At number 23, we have Colorado, who had a great win against TCU. Exciting. Was a great game to watch. Great start for Coach Prime and Shedeur Sanders, and of course Travis Hunter, the former 5-star. TCU, a tough loss. We have them out of the top 25. A lot of people are very high in Colorado, but for me, I think I need to see a few more games before I can have them in my top 10. What do you think, Jack?
Defense didn't come away with a single negative play. I think that you really got to see that adjustment to defense. Not sure that I can trust the offense to put up 500 passing yards a game, which is a school record for the university. Until we see some more consistency on the defensive side of the football, it's tough to put Colorado all the way in the top 10. But there are some schools that do have just offense and no defense. USC. So you never know.
Well, we'll round it off. We have Iowa at number 24, and they looked a little better than what we'd expect from an Iowa offense, putting up 24 points on Utah State. They very much look like an Iowa football team.
Well, you know, it's a big jump from last year's Week 1, infamous Week 1, where they put up a whopping 7 points against South Dakota State Jackrabbits, and I think that we all remember 1 field goal, 2 safeties, and a shit ton of punts. Nice to see the offense actually score for once and get 6, the normal way.
Well, before we wrap this podcast up, we're going to go a brief segment into our predictions for Week 2 of college football. Starting off, the Utah Utes go to Baylor. Jack, who do you got?
I got Utah 69-3. Obviously, Baylor will figure out how to score some points, but if Texas State can beat them, Utah is going to absolutely wax the crumbs off their nutsack.
Next, we have a matchup between two of the biggest party schools in the country. We have Ole Miss and the Rebels going to Tulane. Jack, who do you got?
Oh, man, it's a difficult one to decide between just because both teams will be partying so hard, not sure who's going to actually make it out to the field. Gonna go with Ole Miss, just because old USC ties. Still love their quarterback. Shout out my boy Jackson Dart. And also fuck Tulane.
Fuck Tulane. Next we have Iowa going to Iowa State in one of the best rivalries in college football. Jack, who do you got, and can you name 2 players on Iowa State?
I don't think I can name 2 players on Iowa State, but Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy came from there, and Iowa State and the Cyclones are all about upsets. I'm going to say that they score a miraculous 2 touchdowns, and that's 1 more than they need to beat Iowa 14-10.
Next, we have SMU and the Ponies, future ACC team going to Oklahoma. Jack, who do you got?
Well, Oklahoma just 73 balled. God knows what school it was. I don't even remember if they took the field, but SMU might actually score some points this time. But if Oklahoma's dropping 73 against the Schmucks, I think that they'll probably drop at least 50. Gonna go Oklahoma by 28.
Next, we have our CFB Showdown game of the week. We'll be there, budget depending. Texas goes to Alabama. Who do you got, Jack?
Well, considering how shit Texas looked on offense to start the first half of the game and the fact that Jalen Hurts has come back to play college football for Alabama again, I'm going to go with Alabama cock-slapping in Tuscaloosa, 63-10.
Well, our final prediction for the game, we have Stanford going to USC. I don't need a prediction for this game. My question is, does USC give up less than 50 points?
It's going to be a tough one. I'm going to be betting the over regardless of what they put that number at. Always bet the over on USC football games if you haven't figured that out already. But I think that the Stanford tree might catch a touchdown this week if USC's defense comes to play like they did week 0.
Well, thank you, everyone, for listening. Just a quick reminder, we do have a link in the description for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, who is generously running a fundraiser for the University of Florida football team. If you can donate, we ask that you do, because it is a shit show there.
Hashtag bring back Urban Meyer. AKO, City of Gainesville is counting on you.
Thank you, everyone. God bless.